Okay, let me know when you're ready.
Let's do it, Lara.
Sounds good. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Laura. I'm the social media artist. I'm here on behalf of Creative Unicorns Toronto, and I'm here with a really exciting talk. I've been looking forward to this talk all week with Chen. Shih is a diversity and inclusion expert as well as a certified coach. She is the owner of Two Sisters Consulting and Prosperity Cafe, where she supports women on their prosperity journey, leading them to success in career, health, and happiness. Wow, that's incredible.
Thank
And she helps
you.
yeah, she helps high potential senior execs create inclusive environments and deliver programs that educate organizations on discrimination and its consequences. Very much needed in today's world.
For sure.
Yeah, so welcome, Shih Tzu. I'm really excited to have you here. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you. So delighted to be on the call.
Yeah. So one question for you. This talk is primarily about dealing with our creative blocks. And as
Yes.
artists, and I mean, for me, when the weather's getting cold, it's hard for me to leave my house and avoid Netflix. So I want to first talk to you about what you define a creative block to be.
Yeah, a creative block for me is just knowing that what you want to express is behind that gray wall that you can't access, right? So
Mhm.
it's being stumped with your creativity, it's being stumped with your self expression. It's just knowing that something's there that's available, but you just can't reach it or touch it. And then the worst part about that is you start, like I start being hard on myself. You start beating yourself up for being in that space. And I think we just kind of create our own blocks then, right? So to me, that's a creative block when it's like we have a hard time just accessing it and then we start beating ourselves up over it.
Absolutely. And we're usually the ones that are our own worst critic and kind of enforce it
Absolutely.
on ourselves, right?
For sure. For sure. Yes.
Yeah. And as creatives, we can oftentimes get wrapped up in the business side of making our art profitable, and that
Yes.
will actually distract us from creating our art. So, how do we set aside time to create our art?
Yeah, I think this is where routine comes in. And it's really something that as creative people is difficult because we like the free flowing environment. We like to be called as the spirit moves us. Unfortunately, there are so many shiny new things that hop along. And as you said, we have some realities that we need to manage. The light needs to stay on, food needs to be on the table. And so a pursuit of that actually can distract us from the self-expression that we've decided we need to be in the world. And so routine, setting aside a set time for doing
Mhm.
that is mandatory for us who have defined ourselves as being creative. So
That's so
whether
true.
that's a certain time in the day or a certain time in the week, that we just carve it out and do it diligently.
For sure. For me, what helps is even if I tell myself I'm going to work on this for 20 minutes and
Yeah.
then give myself that, oftentimes I spend hours, but it's just getting started that's the hardest part.
Absolutely. And then one of the things that I suggest is have accountability partners, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we're independent because we're creative, we tap into our own source. And so we're very independent that way. And we're often looking inwards to see what is amusing, like what is calling to me right now in terms of expressing myself, whether it be in words, in art, in painting,
Mhm.
in whatever the self expression might be. But the truth of the matter is, there's a huge community out there. I mean, people who come to this call, people who come to the art shows that are held. And so, what would it look like if we could grab 3 or 4 friends and say, hey, let's huddle and let's create a common time, and
Mhm.
then you immediately have a community where we're all set on expressing our creativity at that point in time. And so that just makes it easier where you can set and define, right, your own time and pace with each other.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's so important having accountability buddies out there. And I know with Creative UTO, with the new artist incubator space that's coming up, that's going to be a big emphasis. Just teaming up with one person or a group of people to just talk about your goals and see how far along you are with them, right?
Absolutely. And I think what also happens is it removes the emotional barrier. Like it takes the heavy lifting off of just me. Like I don't have to be stressed about, oh my gosh, I'm stuck now.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting with other people and it's like, hey, like we just start, when we start sharing our stories, it's lighter and
Hmm.
it's not even present anymore. So creative, our emotional barriers get moved out of the way. And all of that worry that's been hanging around like a cloud just gets dissipated. It's not even necessary for us to have it anymore
Right.
because we're supporting each other to be creative.
I love that. I think that's definitely a major way to get out of a creative block is creating that community around it, right?
Absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. I think the other thing that we need to do, because today's world is very busy, we're constantly running around, is just having a little creative journal. And when I say little, it can be as big or as small as you want, and it can even be online, but making sure that there is a place where you can dump the creative ideas. Sometimes I find that when I'm sitting on the subway, I have these random thoughts. And they're actually brilliant random thoughts. But if I don't log them anywhere, how will I know? They're disappeared. And so I've actually started while I'm on the subway from point A to point B that I just start writing whatever it is I need to write. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's really bad.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, you're writing them down, and even that bad, quote unquote, bad idea might inspire another idea, which might be your $1 million idea, right?
Exactly. And I think it's just to give yourself the permission to keep expressing yourself. That's the key there, rather than when it comes up to say, no, I'm not ready for it. Because then when you sit down, like the mind is like, oh, we're not ready. Why are you sitting down here? So it's about,
Mhm.
it's like keeping the flow going all the time. So
Right.
I actually strongly recommend getting a little creative journal. And then when you have your 5 seconds or 10 seconds, just jot down whatever it is. If you're a painter, what to paint, colors to use, impressions that you've gotten in the street. Um, there's a lot of street art in Toronto. I'm
Hmm.
constantly amazed at the neighborhoods that I go into, like what's on people's garages, on people's walls. It's fascinating. I love it. Like
Yeah.
pictures, right? Like all just something to keep that present constantly in our busy, making a living routine, daily schedule. Yeah.
Totally. So that kind of reminds me every time I'm on the subway and I might be bored, I actually look at the ads and that's just because I do
Oh,
social media. So I like looking at the artistry of the ads and I'll actually snap
yes.
photos of the ones that I find like that really grab my attention because then I can use that idea in the future. So
That's
I really,
brilliant. Good for
yeah.
you. What a great example of using like your environment with you. I think it's great. For me, it's when I attend a conference or listen to a speaker, and then my brain is just supercharged with ideas. And I find that if I don't record them right away, I've lost it. And then when I sit down to write my blog or to write my book, I literally am scrambling because now it's a vacuum. And so I've started really capturing all of those pieces. And like I said, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're really not that great, but
Yeah.
the intention is to just make sure I capture it. Yeah,
Right.
regardless.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. Now, one question I had was regarding, I guess, with creative flow. So,
Uh-huh.
oftentimes as artists, we get into this lovely state where we just can't stop creating, and it's
Yes.
wonderful, and we're so productive. But oftentimes, sometimes that doesn't happen. So, what would you tell someone who's going through? I mean, we all hear writer's block or creative block, but what would you tell someone who hasn't felt inspired to create in a while?
Yeah. Um, haven't felt inspired to create in a while. I would question that because I think that the urge to create is so great that the person has probably capped it in some way because they can't manage it. And
Mm,
so I would say, what would it be like if you could access that? Right? And so, how can you build that access is really the question. One thing I find, particularly when I'm designing programs, is I have to give myself lots of room to daydream. And that's something that when we get fearful, right, when we get emotional barriers, we actually don't allow ourselves to go there. But if you could create some time, especially if you're feeling like your creativity has dried up, to just daydream. What would I do if? Like ask the if questions, do the make believe. If I could do, what would it look like? What would I, call it? What would I say? What colors would I use? Like just the what ifs, like daydream and see what pops out of that. And have also a gratitude journal. I think sometimes when we get into our fearful places, we forget like what's great in our lives, what's really working in our lives. So the creativity journal is to jot down ideas as you're zipping from place to place. Excuse me, but the gratitude journal is really to write down what's working for you every day. So you're coming from a space of being grateful, grateful that I'm creative, grateful that I have a network, grateful that people like you are asking me to talk about this. So just being appreciative of the talent that we have, of the space that we have, and that actually will start to lessen the fear,
Mm-hmm.
lessen whatever constraints there are, right? Routine is a big deal. Like really try and build in a routine. I know that life can get crazy, particularly if you're running from job to job and trying to pull things together. But I know one woman who's a writer, and how she got her book done was getting up and at her desk at 4 o'clock, writing from 4 to 5, because she had her daily, responsibilities, single mom that she had to take care of, and that worked for her. That doesn't work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's 3 to 4 in the evening, or 8 to 9 at night, whenever you're the most creative. But definitely carve the time out for yourself. Maybe it's 3 hours on Saturday instead of 1 hour like throughout the week.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what works for you, right? And just this might sound silly, but take a walk.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find that like changing your physical geography really helps. So rather than sitting in front of the TV and getting sucked into Netflix, like you said earlier, or, I do very short walks to the fridge. And so I have to interrupt that pattern. I have to actually go out, go to the park, walk in the trees, like literally do a much longer walk, shift my geography, shift
Yeah.
my energy. And it's amazing because then the attitude also shifts, the mental thinking shifts, and see what comes out of that. So there's a whole bunch of suggestions. Creative, the gratitude journal, routine, daydream, walk, changing your geography. And if you're a writer, maybe you could paint. So trying something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a
Yeah.
painter, maybe you could start writing a little bit. Like, so triggering something else in your mind to have
I
a,
love that. So many useful tips that we as adults, sometimes it's hard for us to daydream. So that was one where, we're kind of programmed to be practical and not think
yeah,
about things. But I think that just the sky's the limit. It can get you to be so, so creative.
yeah.
And when you mentioned about routine, it kind of reminds me of just going to the gym. At first, it's going to suck and it's going to be so hard. But once it becomes a routine, your body actually craves it. So you kind of have to do it.
And I think that's the key. Your body craves it. And when you
Yeah,
start that routine with your creativity, you will notice when you're not expressing yourself in that way. And that's when you know you've hit your groove, and just keep going at it.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you. So you mentioned that money is an attitude. And so I just wanted to get a clarification of what you mean by that and what are ways that creatives can attract money.
Well, first of all, I think that people who are creative are actually money attraction machines because you're doing something
Hmm.
that you love. And that's the one thing that people always say when it comes to making money: do what you love, right? And so the trick is to really believe that doing what you love is actually going to also generate cash and revenue and a living, and great living. And so I would say to people who are doing art and creative art, don't be afraid of feedback. Like, really get feedback from people. See what there is to improve. And something about being creative, it's so near and dear. Like, it's hard to actually get to listen to what other people have to say about it. And so in some ways you have to depersonalize what you're expressing in the world, because once you've expressed it, it also belongs to the world, not just to you. And oh dear, there we go. Did something happen over here?
Oh, I think it cut out for a moment, but we're back. Can you hear me?
Oh, we're back. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. got it. So I'm not. So I apologize for that. Get that feedback from individuals so that you can. I apologize. There's something on my screen and it's kind of distracting me. So I actually don't know what that is. I'm going to
Oh,
ignore it. Please, Laura, if you can cut this part out.
sure. So,
um,
how about I start off with the question again?
yes, no, that's fine. I've got it. So,
Okay.
like get the feedback and use it as an opportunity to improve your art, rather than an opportunity to go into your cave and hide because somebody criticized it. And also make sure you find people that really will nurture who you are. When I
Mhm.
started writing my blogs, I was so nervous about sharing myself in the world because I wanted to talk about deeply personal things. And so I didn't do anything about it for like 2 years. And I knew this is what I wanted to do, but I just didn't do it. I talked about it and I started beating myself up about it because, here I am talking and not delivering. And what was that all about? And finally, a friend of mine who works in the communications industry said, look, let me partner with you on this. I will be your check. And if it's too personal or it doesn't work, I will tell you. And so I created a trusting relationship with somebody that I like totally count on her to have my back on that.
Mm.
And so when it comes to creating for yourself, have people around you that you trust. And so when they say, oh, maybe a little tweaking there, you get it that it's coming from an honest point. And then when you do that, start actually asking for what it's worth. Don't diminish your talent. Because it's so ingrained to us, we want to give it away for free. And the truth of the matter is, there's a lot of value in what you do. So gauge the value and put the value on it and ask for it. And trust that people will negotiate with you if it's way too high or out of the market.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I would say, right? Like just trust yourself, find trusted partners, and price your art. Uh,
Right.
and then, of course, coming to the art fairs, finding spaces where where you can partner with each other to show each other up is brilliant. I was at the St. Lawrence Market
Hmm.
last year, and a woman had she's a photographer, and she had taken this little booth, basically no bigger than a table, and she was in a hallway, and she was all by herself. So she was surrounded by all of these big stores, like the spice stores and all of
Right.
the food stores and stuff. There she was, tucked in the little hallway with her table, and gorgeous pictures all around her, and some of them were postcard size, some of them were picture frame size, and she was not afraid. She had price tags on every single one. Some of them she had pseudo framed, like not in the actual frame itself, but on like with a white background on it, ready for framing. And I just stopped. I bought like couple of $100 worth of stuff from her because what she had was incredible,
Hmm.
and it was her self-expression. So don't be afraid to go to places and stand there and like share your art. And I think as she was doing that on a fairly regular basis, and I was just she stands out in my mind because not a lot of people will be willing to do that.
Right.
A lot of people would say, oh, I can't do that. Oh, like, oh, no, no, not me. And yeah, and she did good that day. I have her pictures hanging all over my bedroom. They're beautiful.
Wow.
And so I encourage people, like, she was a real lesson for me to do something different and not just what you think you should be doing.
Right. No, I love that. And Shitsu, you've brought about so many brilliant tidbits that I know a lot of artists, when they're hearing this, their gears are turning and they're thinking, oh, maybe this is something I should start thinking differently about, or maybe this is something that I should incorporate into my routine. So thank you so, so much for dropping that knowledge bomb on us today in this short 20 minutes.
Oh, you're more than welcome. The other thing I would say is partner up with people. When I first
Yeah.
started Prosperity Cafe, I wanted to do a women's health, wellness fair,
Mm,
and never done one before. I was so nervous. I didn't want to put all of that investment into it, right? It wasn't a high price point, but at the same time, I didn't want to take all of the risk by myself. And I was so afraid to do it by myself that I talked to a friend of mine who was in another women-owned business. And so the two of us actually shared the table because I
nice.
didn't think I needed the whole thing. And
Yeah.
so why not find somebody with a complementary art that you can share a table? If you're doing jewelry, maybe the other person is a painter, and you just share your wares. And I would send people to her side and she would send people to mine. I have to tell you, I had the best time that day, the best time ever. And if you do that, take chocolate, lots of chocolate.
It's a good tip. No one can
Sure
avoid
fun.
chocolate. And yeah, I think it's so much better to, as artists, to be creating with other people, and it just makes it less like a solo activity. I think that's really big. That's a big
Yeah.
important fact. Yeah. So, speaking of Prosperity Cafe, can you tell us a little bit more and if there's any events coming up?
Absolutely. So, in the new year, I'm planning a lot of stuff. You may have seen some of my prosperity accountability groups that I have been running for the last year. I will be starting them again in January. I'm in the process of creating the dates right now. So, my website is a little bare with regards to dates, but they will be starting again. And I actually started the accountability groups because I needed an accountability group.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful to have like-minded women. I have to tell you, my own productivity goes up every time I run one of those. And so, if you are kind of stuck, want to go in a new direction, please sign up for the groups. They run every quarter. Uh, Friday mornings from 10 to 12, usually at the Annex, which is 720 Bathurst. And then I'm going to be having virtual coaching sessions throughout the year. So stay tuned for that. I think the best thing to do if you're interested is to shoot me an email, hello@prosperitycafe.ca, and I will make sure that you're on the mailing list and have all of the latest upcoming items. So, for example, on my virtual coaching programs, one of the things we talk about is resiliency. What does it take to move to the next level, right? Strategic decision making. So, a lot of very critical items that get in our way, that if we create a strategy around it and some best practices, usually will get us over to the next level. So, thanks
Great.
for asking.
Yeah, we'll definitely be posting to more of that once it's ready underneath this post, so our viewers will get a chance to see that. And I'll also pass along your email for those who are interested as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Shitsu.
Absolutely. This has been delightful.
Yeah, such a lovely way to start off a Monday morning, feeling inspired.
For sure. For sure.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.